Okay, welcome to this Jakarta EE past, present and future. I'm Ivar Grimstad. I'm a Jakarta EE developer advocate at the Eclipse Foundation.
And Sebastian Daschner, a Java developer advocate for IBM for mostly enterprise stuff as well.
So, let's start with the past. So, as you know, Java EE has been with the Java community process for 20 years. It's been a huge success. It's used almost everywhere. There are a lot of things that came out of it. But let's not dwell with the past. As you know, the Java EE was transferred to Eclipse Foundation, where it's now continuing under the name Jakarta EE. So Jakarta EE is what we're talking about today. That just brings us directly into the present situation. And the present is that we just, in September, we launched Jakarta EE8. And we already have a lot of compatible implementations out there. We have Glassfish, which is the compatible implementation from Eclipse Foundation. And we have Open Liberty from IBM, Pyara from Pyara, and Wildfly from Red Hat.
Who of you has tried Jakarta EE already on some runtime?
Yeah, cool.
Who have used Java EE8? Java EE? Okay, well then you basically have tried it as well because there are no API changes so far.
Yeah. So what I thought is let's do a demo. So I'll just do a very quick demo of Jakarta EE8 and then we'll see what's coming next. And there will be more demos in a while. But let's start with this super simple demo. And I'll just go into my IDE here. I'll create a new project. Let me just go to the let's use shall we use Java 13? Should we go? Oh, let's go with 8 so we're secure. So let's call this one demo and Devoxx UA.
You are as creative as I am.
I am. That's good. So should be starting, and I'll just go to the presentation mode here. There we go. So as you see, what I've created now is just a empty Maven project. So what I want to do is to add Jakarta EE to it, and I've cheated a little bit, so don't type so much. So I've got the Jakarta platform API, and for those who are familiar with Java EE, you see that it's very similar. It's just a group ID and artifact ID that's changed, and it's still a provided dependency. And for a Jakarta EE project, I usually use these Maven properties as well. Since we're now using Java SE8, and I don't want to write an XML more than necessary. So let's just create a simple class here. Oh, sorry. There we go. And let's call it this hello. And this one should be a JAX-RS resource. So I'll just annotate it with at path. And let's call this one. Sorry, there we go. Oh, I'll go down. Yes, there we go. Better. Hello. So there you go. Let's go. Come on. Tell me, IntelliJ users, why doesn't this work? Because I don't have a package name. Let's do that. Yeah, package demo. There you go. And move this one to demo. No, not scratch file. There you go. There you go. I want this one. Yeah, probably have to build it or something. There you go. So, and also just need a simple configuration, my application. There you go. And I'll call this one, just have it at the root path. And extend the JAX-RS application.
Who's familiar with that syntax, JAX-RS?
Yeah. So this is all I do, and I also need a, let's say a string hello, where I can have a query param, for example, call it name. Yes?
Sure.
So, like, this is one of the many pain points, right? Why the heck do we need that stupid application class? There's someone who asked themselves this question. And then Jakarta EE 9, one doesn't have to do it, and some reasonable defaults provide.
Well, that's the default that you need for a JAX-RS servlet, right? Because you can have some application without that, right?
I want it so that if I don't need it, it infers the reasonable default.
Yeah, totally agree. So
Does that then the servlets people who do that, or is that the whole Jakarta? I mean, is there someone who says, well, this is a pain in the neck, so...
I suggest you put it on the Jakarta REST mailing list. So it will be the responsibility of the Jakarta REST project to fix that. So.
I note that as well because I'm in JAX-RS group.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of thing that's been bedeviling this platform, right? This fragmentation that there's no one person who says, yeah, let's make this easy.
Right.
And everyone says, well, it's these people.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it's correct, but you have to understand before, you know, you had to configure some web XML and some servlet. That was, you know.
Yeah.
But you're right.
So this is typically how you create an application. It's no more configuration than that, and you would be able to run it. I don't know if we should spend time on that, or if I should just move on to.
We can show some more later on.
We can show some more later. So what you typically would do now is just to create a Docker file, put it in there, and go with it. But let's jump to the slides and look at what is coming up in the future. So what we're looking at currently is that there's still some lawyers involved. There's still some IP clearance to get all these specification documents over. So there are still some things that are being done at the Eclipse Foundation to get all the documents to be released. But we did, was it last week or the week before, in the middle of October, we got released 10 new documents. So we have, I think it's 13 specs available out there that we got all the documentation source from Oracle over to Eclipse Foundation, and they're working on the IP clearance of the rest of them. The total list is on GitHub on the platform project. I created a board there so we can have an overview of it. And as you see, there are 2 specs under Jakartification, what do we call them? That is to remove all references to the old Java and Java EE and just make them Jakarta specs. So the platform and web profile has already been done. That was done for Jakarta EE8. And currently they're working on the Jakarta RESTful Web Services and security. There are a couple of here up for grabs. So anyone who wants to contribute can go in there and just, it's more or less search and replace and just fix these documents so they don't have references to the old stuff. And the first column there, it's IP clearance pending. That's because Eclipse Foundation has to call or contact all the contributors for these specs to check that there are not patents involved. So it's a very thorough process going through there to get things right so we never have any problems in the future. We've also just started looking at Jakarta EE9, and one of the big things there will be the namespace change. As you know, we cannot use the Devoxx namespace anymore. So what we'll do is to change that namespace to Jakarta. And the approach that is most likely to happen is that we do a big bang approach. So we take all the specs that are going to be a part of the platform and transform them over, get rid of all the old stuff, and go with it. Another thing we are looking at is pruning some old stuff. So a lot of the things that aren't used anymore is, this is kind of Halloween-y theme, but we won't kill them. We won't take them away. You can still use them, but you will be using the as is. We won't be developing them any further. And they probably won't be a part of the spec in the future. So we will remove things that aren't used that much anymore and deprecate things. These are just some examples. So what we want to do with Jakarta EE9 is to get it out the door as soon as we can. And as soon as we can will probably mean, or I'm hoping, without promising anything, that we can do it before summer. But that depends on different things, how we can get things going. But we are starting this work now, and join the platform dev list if you want to be in that discussion. And the thought of having Jakarta EE9 as fast as possible is to get the namespace out of the door so the vendors can do their product updates before we add features. Because if we add features, it's going to be harder. We're also looking at tooling to make this transformation from Javax to Jakarta namespace easier. And when we look at after EE9, we're thinking of adding things. So JNoSQL is a spec that is there. They are eager to get into the platform. That's up for discussion. This is probably something that are useful for many people. MicroProfile is there. We are working with the MicroProfile, which is also an Eclipse project. So to figure out how we're going to do this in the future. And currently, there are some issues with the MicroProfile process and how they handle their contributions that has to be handled for Jakarta EE to be able to consume these specs. So we're not talking about merging anything together or moving MicroProfile into Jakarta EE or the other way. We're just looking at ways to align the processes so they can consume each other.
Who of you has used MicroProfile? Okay.
Yeah, we'll do a demo of that, right?
We will do a demo.
Cool. Looking forward to that.
No, not really. It's not part of Jakarta EE, but as you can see here, it contains also Jakarta APIs. For example, CDI, JAX-RS, JSONB. So it's based on the same things. And that is, and this is what I will demo in a second, that is why you can actually use both in the same application, which makes actually a lot of sense for a few reasons. So it contains enterprise Java APIs and technology, and it's based on some of the same subsets of the standards.
They are both Eclipse Foundation projects, so that's where they have the common nature. But Jakarta is a working group, and that's why it can be called Jakarta. Eclipse is a project, or MicroProfile is a project. That's why it's called Eclipse MicroProfile officially, even though everybody says MicroProfile. Yes?
This is going to confuse everyone because there's no end. I mean, you can't explain it to the point that we can understand this. And this is just a self-inflicted wound. I mean, there ought to be a clear thing that MicroProfile is a subset of Jakarta EE. That's micro. Mm. And that's got to have to be the end game. I mean, you're just going to lose so much mind share otherwise. Mm. Just saying.
I fully agree.
That's the discussion we're having. So it will be aligned, and how it's practically going to be, it's going to be solved somehow. So as you see, MicroProfile is a set of APIs and specifications that are built on top of Jakarta EE, and currently the vendors that are shipping MicroProfile products are also shipping them together with Jakarta EE. So you have they work nice together.
Awesome.
So should we
Right.
go to a demo, more demo?
I think that was enough of the, you know, like
Slides are boring.
part and enough of the boring lawyer part.
Yeah.
Who wants to see a demo? More demo. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
And we'll leave some time for questions and stuff at the end.
This. Always confused. I've used microphones for like 200 times and still don't know how to put them on. All right. Now, no slides, only code. Excuse me?
At least you don't have to write an upper class every time you have to do it.
Yeah. All right. So there's another project, a Jakarta project, and also what I will show you is some MicroProfile stuff. So this is also a Maven project here, and what I'm going to show you is, well, Jakarta EE8 with MicroProfile, with the combination of both, and I'm going to introduce some APIs. And just because I'm brave, I used Java 12. Who of you uses Java 12 in production? Hands up. Yay. We all had a good laugh. Yeah.
Why aren't you on 13?
I know. I got this question, and you're absolutely right, because I was traveling a lot and I haven't had time to update that demo. Yes, that should be your answer. Why am I not on 13? Because it's 13 is already out there yet. So what you saw before, what Ivar did, we can build this project using Maven, right? So then I have like a thin WAR file deployment artifact, and now I could use some Docker file and things like that to make a Docker image out of it, right? So I could demo this to show this Hello World example, but actually what I will do instead, I show a cool Liberty feature. Well, just because I happen to use OpenLiberty, so there's a plugin that actually allows you for, somewhat faster development experience, which you can start up, that starts up Liberty in a development mode, which is called, you probably see this, yeah, Liberty Dev. And if I start up that, then it starts Liberty in, where is my terminal? Yeah, there it is. So yeah, it starts Maven. It starts up Liberty in a mode where it actually listens for some file changes. So here we go. I have the same super exciting Hello World resource. It is also a JAX-RS path, a JAX-RS application. So this comes with the resource/greetings. And then I have, well, two resource methods. One says hello and the other says hi. Exciting, I know. And we also have, yes, I know, to have this configuration class, but that's about it. And then I already use some CDI class that does my business logic, quote unquote, saying hi and hello. So once that is up and running, then we can use some REST client or curl or browser or whatever to access the application that is called hello. Where we go to greetings, say hello or hi, then, well, surprisingly enough, we get that response, right? But now what we get, we already have some, like modern runtimes that have a little bit better support, especially while developing, right? So what this plugin actually does, if we change something here, hello to hello exclamation mark, then what it does, it immediately reloads your application and very quickly just I should call the other resource, restarts the application in less than a second, less than half a second here, and then you can immediately reflect the changes that you have in your application. So that happens instantly, so I can reload whatever I have here and then just trigger that change again. So that happens for all the classes I have. I can add some more resources, I can add some other stuff, and also what I can do, I can configure now some MicroProfile features. So this thing here is some XML code, but don't worry, it doesn't get bigger than that. That is the configuration of my Liberty runtime. That is now Liberty specific, but what I can show you here are some MicroProfile features. For example, I can add MicroProfile Open API. And by the way, this plugin also supports if I reconfigure stuff, something on the fly, so I don't even have to restart for that. And what it does, and that's now a MicroProfile standard, if I hit /open API, then it will give me a YAML, yay, we all have a YAML, YAML resource of the Open API standard. So it basically gives me, out of the box, a description of the endpoints I have here, right? So I don't have to, write that myself. That is part of MicroProfile Open API, and I think that's, very helpful thing for us.
So now this is an open API
MicroProfile Open, yeah.
It's in all MicroProfile implementations since 2 something happens, right?
I'm not exactly sure since which number, but yes.
It's some part of MicroProfile, right?
Yes, that is part of MicroProfile, exactly.
Right? So something
I think so.
Is something like that just going to become part of Jakarta EE on the strength that is useful, or?
Yes, of course. I mean, it has to, right?
Yeah.
Because these are the things, this is where we want to evolve. I mean, I get your point. There was some history why we could not evolve that further, but the point is now, even today, with Jakarta EE8, you don't have to wait for, 10 or 10 plus in order to do that, because you can use the combination of Jakarta and MicroProfile, because it's based on the same thing, right, as you can see here, and I think that's the helpful part of it. Same with metrics. If we want to add some metrics, who of you has used Prometheus metrics formats before, like cloud native monitoring, de facto standard in the modern world? Well, a few. There is some default resource for that as well. If we hit /metrics, that is also MicroProfile metrics and MicroProfile thing. Then we can have, this looks a little bit weird, that's a Prometheus plain text resource of some default metrics. So out of the box, MicroProfile requires us to add some metrics for technical stuff like garbage collection, time, memory, CPU, blah, 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 blah. What I can also do, that's a little bit more interesting for the business, is to add some business-related metrics, right? So not just saying, oh, what's the memory footprint, whatever, who cares, but how many hellos have I had in my application? How many coffee orders have I produced? How many cars have been created, right? So what I can do, I can use the API, and that is now the part where I actually use this dependency of MicroProfile in my code. That is, by the way, also provided, right? Same story like in EE, where I can now use the either declarative or programmatic API to have some metrics, some custom metrics. For example, I can say, that's the easiest example, at counted, to literally count method invocations, right? So if I say, please add a metric here that is, I don't know, hellos total, something like this, total invocation of these hellos, then it will register a metric, a counter in this case. So again, I can just hot reload that and just reload hello. Raz, dva, tri. Have the invocations. Yeah, some got my Russian. And then already I have this metrics being included here, and that is now a business-related metric. So I can add something in my code, and then that can be scraped for business use cases, whatever I have. The same is true if I want to inject a programmatic counter that I can like programmatically increase, decrease, or whatever, or have some other metrics. I can have some histograms, some gauges, and there are a few types supported with that. You can have a look at the MicroProfile metrics specification if you're interested. Another thing, health checks, MicroProfile health. That's also a helpful feature. What it does, if I add this, now again, oops, wrong mode, then it will just add this feature, redeploy my application, and then under /health, I would get some default resource. Well, now it doesn't have any checks. So what I can do, I can add some health checks for my application on, well, depending on what my application does, right? So I can add some readiness or liveness probes or health checks. If you're into container orchestration like Kubernetes, you might have heard this notation before. Let's make this a CDI class and implement a health check interface to implement this health check here. So let's say, well, we could query the database in external system or whatever that it does. Or in this case, we should say, oh, by the way, if the application is deployed, then we're healthy, we're good, we're up and running, right? So then we reload this. We have a new invocation here, and then we say, okay, now we have one check, and that is up, right? We could add some data if we say, oh, hello world, to do something like this, right? And then it adds some data here, and so on and so forth. The nice story is what I'm showing you with this tool, this Open Liberty tool. It just enables you to have a very nice, development experience, right? Because you don't have to wait. Typically, what I would need to do to reflect all these changes, right, is to, well, invoke Maven clean package, or Maven package, or Maven package and skip the tests, right, if we're honest. And then do a Docker build, right, to build my Docker image, and then do a Docker run, right. or redeploy to my locally installed runtime, or however I do this, right? But I always would need to wait at least 20, 30 seconds until that is up and running, right? And with that, I have my changes being reflected immediately. So that, and that is called Liberty plugin. That is a Maven plugin just. And it's, I would say, only for, or mostly for development purposes. So, you know, that's not a production mode that you run, but it's close enough to just try out, you know, whatever you do. And it basically, what it does under the target directory, it runs some stuff here, Liberty, and just installs that. In production, you would build it using a Docker image typically, but that allows you to, you know, just reload all kinds of stuff. It heavily relies on convention, right? So it knows about, you know, the server XML, that's a Liberty thing. It knows about the POM XML and, of course, all of the features in Jakarta and in MicroProfile.
So this is an open Liberty feature?
Yes.
So IBM does this, right? So this kind of...
It's open source, yeah.
Yeah, but this kind of is a poster child of why one should move to Java EE, namely that you have competing vendors come up with nifty features, right?
Fully agree.
With that other platform that should remain unnamed, you know, Spring doesn't do it, Spring won't do it.
Yeah.
So this is like a good story to tell, right? To say, you know, maybe Red Hat will do one thing and IBM will do a different
Exactly.
thing.
Or maybe create a Jakarta tools project that will do this, that will be vendor
Even better, and then all support it.
But I mean, innovation happens because it happens somewhere. And
Exactly.
it merged into the standard,
Yes,
right?
yes, fully agree. And the good point of that is that you can use it right away. So you don't have to wait for this standardization. If once it's in the standard, you know, you can switch, whatever, that makes sense. But you can use it right away. And the same is true with the combination of Jakarta and MicroProfile. If you support it, and Liberty is one of these runtimes that support both, like Payara and Wi-Fi as well, and then, you know, you can just go with that combination. And I think that's a very productive and effective modern runtime here. Thanks for a comment, very, very helpful. MicroProfile config. Let's add some configuration. What Jakarta still, well, doesn't have is injectable configuration. You can actually create, you know, a single class CDI producer method that, you know, injects some configuration programmatically. It's not a huge effort, but still, it's nicer if it just comes out of the box, and, you know, it's straightforward if you just add some configuration in a, you know, cloud-native world with environment variables and things like that. I would just quickly add a new JAX-REST resource for some configuration. Let's say we have a config method that now, well, returns something that I can inject. So I want to inject a configured value. In this case, there is a annotation that now comes with Eclipse MicroProfile config called config property. And then I can inject something like, you know, let's say greetings. And that should be my greetings property here, which I will return. And then I can invoke this other resource and say, where was my hello? And say, instead of greetings, I say config. And then it says, if I, oh, did I do it correctly? Probably had a mismatch somewhere. Oh, yes, it says, what did I do wrong? Who can tell me? I forgot to, I added the feature.
Greetings in the URL.
Yes, it says an error message of basically.
Okay, so I only have one question.
Yes.
Why doesn't it show the file name and the line number of the offending artifact?
Which offending artifact?
Well, there's going to be some artifact where you made a typo or a mistake. So what the play framework would now do is would show you, because it's been engineered to do this, it would show you the line number and the file name, so you did something wrong.
Well, in this case, it doesn't have the line numbers. It uses classes, right? Because that's the deployed server.
Well, that's the problem. That's
Right.
a huge problem with Java EE. That someone needs to fix.
Yeah. I mean, once you only have the classes, you don't have the information.
So I tell you, the reason that, you know, when I teach this, I use play, is it doesn't suffer from that problem. It makes a heroic effort, just like the Liberty thing right now makes a heroic effort to figure stuff out.
Right.
And so in dev mode, you really want that. One reason that
That's a good point, yeah.
Jakarta EE is such a horrendous time sink is just what you're experiencing right now.
It's not related to specification, it's about implementation.
It's an implementation thing. I mean, in this particular.
So far, all vendors have been united in running away from this issue.
No, that's a good feedback. I would say in this issue, probably depends if you could point to a specific line, because that's more a wiring up issue. It says it doesn't find the...
It should tell you what it has tried.
Okay.
And so actually, if I will do this, it says, I've looked here,
Mm-hmm.
I've looked here, I've looked here, and nada.
Well, it basically says that. It says, you know, it does not
I've spent,
add that.
yeah, I've spent,
And actually, you can see it here, if I would read correctly. Property was not found.
but you have to now know what to do. So this is something that...
Actually, and in this case, sorry, but I have to disagree. In this case, it tells you pretty exactly what happens. The property greetings was not found in the configuration.
Okay. In which configuration?
Well, in any configuration. MicroProfile config has a few config sources that I would look through, and in this case, it was not found in any. Why? Well, of course, I did a typo. And now I already spoiled my joke because I didn't want to tell you where it comes from. It's called greeting, as far as I know. Now it works, and this hey comes from that config.
I'm going to say this again because it really is dear to my heart. So what
Please.
what the implementors should do, not you personally, right, but the Open Liberties and the wildfires of the world, they should really work hard on this issue and say, have a look at this file, have a look at that file, have a look at that file. You might find something there. Because for someone who's not intimately familiar with all of these files, meaning everyone except you and Anna Bean, it is really a slog to do this. I speak from heartfelt experience because this morning I had to fix up something all day yesterday. I spent something out of 400-line stack trace because in some stupid artifact I misspelled something.
Right.
And so it took me forever to build another project that where it did work and another one where something else worked and triangulate from both of those working projects with stupid magic line I needed to put in. And one should not have to waste a day.
No, that's true, and it's. I would say it's very good feedback. I would still say in this case it was very obvious the error message, but I mean I agree with you. Sorry.
No, here's the mindset that you absolutely must have. It doesn't matter if it's obvious to you or to Adam.
No, and I agree.
It has to be file name, line number.
Yeah. So what this message should say? Listen now. It says this wasn't configured. Look in the configuration file, and it could name the file.
It could name the file exactly. No, good point.
Please. Okay. Yeah. So obviously I'm speaking here with passion because this is something.
And fair enough. That's very good feedback.
I have wasted an enormous amount of time of my life. And every time, you know, the vendors say, yeah, it is kind of pretty obvious and any skilled developer could do this. You would get a lot more unskilled developers into this platform if you made it possible. I can't tell you how many people have told me, what the crap, I'm just not going to do this because I have other things to do than go through a stack trace.
Right. Fair enough.
File name, line number. File name, line number.
We have another
I totally agree,
feedback.
and it's totally the same thing for any framework out there, that the error messages should be better, and that is only one thing we as a developers can take into us, that we need to provide some good feedback to the users of the software.
So this platform has 20 years, like more, basically, and it still has this problem, but this problem is actually the same thing that every JavaScript developer faces every day. You make a typo and it doesn't run on production because it's at the end of the day stringly typed. So thanks to such platforms, but Spring is not different. We have stringly typed thing in Java. It's like, cool, why compiler when we can just put everything in the strings and just happily, and maybe the tests are cool, and then we'll see the error, yeah?
Yeah. No, very good feedback. All right. So let's come back here. What we did, we just injected that value, and out of the box, it uses some convention default config sources. For example, this property files, that's also default path provided is one, and environment variables is one. That's very helpful for containerized environments. Actually, by the way, again, if we change this configuration, that's also being picked up by the tooling because it uses a convention path here, which is very helpful. So, you know, if you want to reconfigure stuff, that's also being picked up here as well.
and that is how to do injectable configuration with MicroProfile config here as well. So these are just a few examples where you can use MicroProfile in combination with Jakarta. With that approach of the development experience, also what I want to show you is, yes? Yes, well, yes and no. If you use the features here, what I showed you with Open API, metrics and health, that actually works without a dependency. For the others, where I had to type a little bit of code, that is basically this dependency, MicroProfile. That's the umbrella MicroProfile that includes all of the projects. You could also individually say MicroProfile config, only, only config or only health or all of them. But that's basically what I add here, yeah.
And what this also does, you have the provided dependencies there. That means that you can take this code and move it to another vendor, such as Wildfly or Piara, and it will run without any changes in your dependencies. You will have to change which Maven plugin you're using, since these are Liberty specific. But if you want to run it on Wildfly, you just use the Wildfly specific stuff. But the dependencies are the same.
All right, if we want to run tests, that's also a thing we should do. What it can do, actually, what this plugin provides, just because it's easy, you can hit enter and then it runs unit tests and integration tests. Now only unit tests because they already failed. Or of course, I can run them in my IDE. That's what we know, right? And the point is here not to write such super simple, stupid tests, but the point is about the developer experience. That you can have these type of tests, especially if you have a what's happening with my IDE? Yeah, there we go. If you have the tests that connect against a running environment already, because that just enables you to test stuff much faster. So I changed my code. Let's rerun the unit test, either in the in the IDE or even from command line using Maven if I want to, or here using this plugin where I just hit enter and now it already ran both because hello test worked and then hello IT. You might know this IT for integration test. That's also Maven convention. So I'm just using convention here so I don't have to configure stuff in my POM. That means it per default doesn't run the test with Surefire but only with failsafe. And what this does, it basically uses a client that connects to my running application here locally, where I can put in some other properties and say, okay, that runs somewhere else. The point is here, that's about the developer experience. If I say, I changed something in the code, and now the change in my kind of like production-like environment in the running application is already being reflected, right? So I don't run something simulated, right? Like a Killian, if you know that, or CDI a unit, or Spring context tests, because that's always a little bit different to what you would what you would have in production, right? When it comes to JSON mapping, endpoints, configuration, and things like that. But still, I get the fast feedback because if I do some changes here, I mean, as I saw before, if I change hello again to hello exclamation mark, and then I want to rerun the test, I can immediately rerun the test that runs against my updated application, and I see immediately that failing test with no downtime or with no turnaround time. I don't have to wait. I immediately do the code change, I rerun the test, and then it's right there. And that is just helpful because it enables you to stay longer in that programming flow experience because you don't have to wait here in this case. And then again, I can rerun that here as well. You probably have seen how you use Maven in this way. If for some reason you want to use your tests from the command line, then the default is either Maven test or Maven verify or Maven package. It will run the Surefire test, so it will run your unit tests. That is what I just ran here. Here it runs both. Or if you want to run them individually, that works. Or if I run Maven failsafe integration test, that runs then only my ITs, my integration tests. So this uses this Maven convention of the IT naming. And in this case, well, it also runs this smoke test, this end-to-end integration test that connects to my running localhost application. So that is just one thing to do. What I also want to show you. What? Situate what? The tests, these are plain Maven Surefire failsafe tests, plain Maven stuff. I can run anything here. And this happens to be a JAX REST client that connects to my application. And this is a very good point. For the tests, I always want to keep it simple. Plain JUnit, plain Maven, why it runs faster. I don't have to start up a lot of stuff each and every time I run the tests. When I execute the tests, they should run fast, and they should use things that already have been started up before, just because it's faster. What else I can show you is the Docker experience. So what you would then put into production is the Docker image that you built using EE, and especially using a thin deployment artifact approach. Let's build this again. That is very nice because it basically goes together with how Docker images use the copy on write file system, the caching approach. So that means if I have a small deployment artifact, and in this case it's, well, just a few kilobytes, this of course will shrink, will grow, but it will not grow, up to megabytes or more, because it only contains my classes. It only contains literally what I write here, the compiled classes, and nothing more. No implementation. Why? Because I have provided scope, right? So that means if I then say Docker builds something to a temporary image, this also runs very, very quickly, and it will also transfer quickly, right? Because the latest layer that I only have to transfer is, just a few kilobytes. And then, of course, I can run it, Docker run that temporary image, and then it basically starts up the same application server. Now, the other point is, usually in a default development workflow, I would always have to do this, right? Rebuild Maven, rebuild the image, start the image, and then wait for, I don't know, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And then I can basically invoke the same thing. But during development, I, of course, want to make that faster, right? So I can use some tools, what I just showed you, with a little bit more increased development experience. All right, are there any more questions? It's basically that demo that I want to show you.
So would you think this kind of tooling would be something we should explore to standardize, so you can even just take away the application server part of it?
Or so incentivize other vendors as well.
Yeah. What features are you looking forward to in Jakarta EE after 9, if any?
Jcache.
Jcache, yeah, that's a good idea. Config server, so like MicroProfile config or similar.
Something like having a config server on like separate node and multiple nodes reading config from this server.
And then like a client that is already included that can connect to it easily.
Yeah. So the beauty of MicroProfile config is that you can provide your own configuration source very easily. So you can just write that service that just basically is a key value. And then you can ask for that and have the @config like this.
While using Spring, Spring Cloud config, I can have configuration in some kind of Git repository for a whole environment. And I'd like to use that from Jakarta EE. So that would allow you to have like not disrupt this by writing some kind of client that would have containers with config, some kind of patch, so it would be loaded. Right?
Yeah, that's fully possible to do with MicroProfile config. It's pretty easy. I did similar thing with a pet open source project called Snoopy that I made. I had a Snoopy config, which is exactly the thing you're mentioning. It's just a couple of lines of code to do it.
Hello, my question is how to use in my application both sets of specification. It's Jakarta and MicroProfile. For example, Eclipse MicroProfile provides a very nice approach. I talked about fault tolerance and especially circuit breaker. So is it possible to use a circuit breaker with EGB calls?
Yes.
Because
you could use that in this approach as well. I mean, if we had more time, I can show you MicroProfile fault tolerance as well. In the same approach where you use Jakarta and MicroProfile.
So can I use fault tolerance for EGB calls?
Yes.
Thanks.
I mean, it would guard any class that you have. It's that is regardless of this. What you would need in runtime that supports both, right? Like Liberty or Payara or a latest version. I mean, that's obvious, right? Because it need to support both specifications. Right?
Thanks.
What Jakarta EE gives us that Spring or other tools cannot give? I mean, what is it offering us? We can say that we are somehow dealing with the Spring most of the time, and Spring framework is very powerful, and even Camel framework is integrated into the framework. So we are expecting from Jakarta EE something new, actually something simpler than the Spring. I mean, I don't like the layered architecture that Springs force us. I want to be expecting Jakarta EE compatible with the domain-driven design or something like this. Can you comment on it?
I mean, it's all up to the community now which direction Jakarta EE goes. So if you have some cool features that you want to see there, the first thing you should do is propose that on the mailing list and see if somebody else has the same idea, and then put your brains together and figure out some good things, how to do it. And the Eclipse Foundation will help you with the governance and guiding you through that process. Because we are now in a situation that it's open source, it's open for everybody to contribute. It's not like we used to have Oracle doing all the work for us. And that was both a bad thing and a good thing, because we had all the clever architects at Oracle that actually stood up and said, we're going to deliver this, and I did it. It went a little slower than we wanted it to be. But now it's up to us. So we cannot just sit there and say, we want this, because then nobody's going to give it to you. So it is get the community involved, get the ideas out there, and start do the work, and then the companies that are involved will put resources on it and make it happen.
From a developer's perspective, to answer your question, and I get that question a lot, right? So what to use, should you use Spring or should you use Jakarta, or what does it give you? From a technical perspective, I can say, doesn't matter. You can use both. And as you say, Spring is a very good solution, right? And if you have, let's say, the boring 95 or 99% of the enterprise applications, it really doesn't matter. You can use both. They all support whatever HTTP transactions, databases. It actually just matters where you have the knowledge in the APIs, right? And what your team uses in the projects. And if you're familiar with all of the Spring APIs, use that. But if you're familiar with enterprise Java technology, like JAX-RS API, CDI, JSON-B, and a lot of developers have knowledge in that, then this is basically, that way to choose. Now it's at least possible to use Jakarta and to use MicroProfile, in combination to fill the gaps that was not possible before, with cloud native integration and better, smoothless experience, more smoother experience. And that is then basically, going to happen in Jakarta, right? So it's basically a question what knowledge you have. And there are a lot of projects and enterprises out there that have a lot of legacy technology with EE, but where there are tons of developers that have that knowledge in these APIs, and that's then very helpful if you can just use some approach and you don't have to throw away all of that experience or throw away all of the code that you have. You can use that to migrate all the older projects. You can use the same APIs if you have knowledge in JAX-RS CDI. That's going to be the same thing, and I would say that is one benefit of the platform.
So can I give the answer that I think you shouldn't have given here?
Please.
The traditional advantage of Java EE over something like Spring was, Spring is one vendor. Who knows who's going to buy that vendor next year, and what their business plan is going to be. With Java EE, this traditional story was you had multiple suppliers of technology who were competing in ways that you were just showing off, right? Open Liberty has this nifty new feature that others don't have. But Tom EE might have some other nifty feature that someone else doesn't have. And so this competing ecosystem should mean for us, hopefully, that it's going to be around for a long time. It's going to get better and better. And so that's what used to be the traditional pitch. And it's not been very much like that in the last few years because of all this history.
Yep.
But that's where one would hope things would get back to. Right now there is a new chance to revive this. You have a chance with MicroProfile to say this is an incubator for a lot of features, for example. You still have this standardization process. And I don't think it's good enough to say, well, if you like Spring, use Spring. I want Java EE to become better than Spring. I want no one to ask the question, why the heck should I ever use Spring? So that's would be kind of what I would like to hear from the Jakarta people, instead of confused musings about the difficulty of the transition. It would be awfully nice if someone would provide some uplifting vision where this thing is going to go. Just saying.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Right, if you have some more questions, then we'll definitely be around. Another thing, very important, we have stickers. Not only Jakarta, but some other technology as well. So they're here on that table. Please help yourself with stickers. And yeah, we hope that was helpful, and thanks a lot for your attention.